Hey everyone, Rob here from Gunfather Milsim. Today we're going to talk about pre-firing, why it's reckless, and why it works. So, what is pre-firing? Pre-firing is a common technique used in Airsoft CQB and Speed CQB and what have you. And it's a bit of a controversial technique on some fields. Some players really don't like it. They speak out against it. They think it's kind of cheating, and other people swear by it because, well, it's effective. So first thing we're gonna do is define what exactly it is. So to the marker board. So let's say you have a corner here and your good guy and the blue is approaching this corner this way, and dumb luck, there's a bad guy hiding right there, and this bad guy is watching and waiting for something to pop around this corner. Now the way pre-firing works is as this guy's approaching this corner, he's gonna fire around this corner as he's pieing it. Okay. So he's going to shoot as he's going, or just pop and shoot. And what's going to happen here is this guy's going to get hit. And because this guy is reacting to him, he's going to get hit first. Okay. Now, you'll see this a lot when there's not someone here, and you'll know they're pre-firing because you'll shoot, and they'll shoot in an empty wall or an empty space, and you'll see them make that shot, and there's nothing there. That means they were pre-firing. Okay. They're just taking the chance that this is a spot on the field where they either know there's somebody or there's probably someone here. It's a common place for someone to be, and they're just going to shoot. And they've made the decision to fire that shot, whether there's somebody there or not. They're going to fire that shot. They're not going to wait to observe that area and make a conscious shoot, no shoot decision and observation. They're just going to squeeze the trigger and go. So why is pre-firing so effective? Well, basically it comes down to OODA loops. Now, OODA loops, OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. It's basically a decision-making process that everybody has to go through when you're in any sort of conflict, okay? And the key to using OODA loops to your advantage is getting ahead of the other person's process. I'll explain. I did a video on it in my CQB series. I'll put a link to it below. It kind of explains it more thoroughly, but the short version is you basically want to be surprising people and confusing people and not letting them know where you're at or what you're going to be doing. You always want to be acting and not reacting. So in this situation, here's our bad guy, and he's observing this space here. And anything that steps into this space, whether it be this guy or whatever, he has to observe it, decide whether it's friend or foe, orient himself towards the threat, make the decision to fire, and fire. Okay, that's observe, orient, decide, act. This guy has the advantage because he doesn't care what's around the corner. He doesn't have to observe it. He doesn't have to orientate himself towards the threat because he already knows where it is or where he thinks it is. He's already made the decision to shoot. All he has to do is act. He's at the end of the OODA loop at the act, and this guy's still at observe. And that's why pre-firing is so effective, and that's why he's going to win every time. So here's the problem with it. It depends on the field, but it's very reckless, sort of. So if your field has, let's say it's a sub 300 FPS field and there is no minimum engagement distance, then it doesn't matter. Then it is an effective technique, and you're probably going to friendly fire some people every once in a while. But honestly, if there's no med and there's no danger of this guy being, inside of the med, maybe he's right on this corner, and as this guy snaps this corner and pre-fires, he shoots this guy at a range of like 6 inches. If there's a med, that's a huge violation, and that's on him. Okay, that's on the shooter. You're responsible for every shot you fire. Okay, real world, airsoft, doesn't matter. You're the one who's responsible for everything you send downrange. But if there is no med, this is all perfectly legal, and it's a very effective technique. Now, there's another side of this, which is it reckless? Absolutely. It's absolutely reckless because since you are responsible for every shot you fire, it's you're responsible for knowing whether this is a friend or foe. So let's say you use airsoft for training to some degree, some sort of real world training, whether it just be affordable force on force training or in a more official capacity like law enforcement or whatever. Pre-firing is a huge no-go. You cannot do this because you're responsible for every shot you fire, and you have to see what you see before you do what you do. You're responsible for your actions. Okay, so if you shoot something you're not supposed to shoot, that's on you. I actually had a guy on the channel somewhere in a comment section was bragging about pre-firing, how amazing it was, and how he's such an effective real world gunfighter because of pre-firing, because it's so effective in airsoft. And I was like, well, no, you're an idiot, and you're showing your lack of real world understanding and your lack of understanding of real world criminal law and liability because you think you can just randomly shoot around corners. It's just the real world doesn't work that way. So pre-firing, extremely effective in airsoft. Real world, huge no-no. Is there a way in the real world where I think you could articulate, now I'm speaking from kind of a SWAT perspective, where I think I could possibly articulate pre-firing? Yes, but it's in such a rare circumstance. I could probably work 100 careers and never even come close to being in that position. So years ago, I took an anti-terrorism, kind of counterterrorism class. It was a 40-hour class. It's basically gunfighting 101 from some guy. He was in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, back in the day. Big time counterterrorism guy. And he called this technique Recon by fire. He showed it to us. We thought it was interesting, but we were going to have a hard time legally articulating it. But what he was talking about with Recon by fire was basically you have like a, we'll just go with the center fed room, and you got, a bad guy in there or multiple bad guys, doesn't really matter. But as you are pieing this, you are shooting as you're going. Okay, so it's kind of like pre-firing, but theoretically that would force this bad guy into the corner of the room where there's nowhere else to run, and where finally you can engage him and shoot him. So basically, as you are pieing, you are shooting. So you basically decided that as you're pieing, you're going to shoot as you pie. It's basically pre-firing. Now, the context here was he was going after terrorists that they were actively in a gunfight with. In a law enforcement context, you would have to ensure that there was no innocence in that room, and you'd also have to ensure that there was definitely a bad guy who definitely had hostile intent, who represented an imminent threat of serious bodily harm or death in that room, and you definitely knew was there. You basically would have to peek it, take a shot, disengage, and then shoot, and you'd have to know that there were no innocents in there. Basically, never going to happen. But that is the only context I could think of where you could possibly articulate pre-firing in the real world. So, pre-firing, how do you beat it when you're on the other side of it? Difficult. Anytime you're reacting to somebody else, you are going to be subject to being on the losing end of that OODA loop and being a victim of this pre-firing. So, one thing you can do, if you are lucky enough that this guy peeks and then drops back, don't stay here because you know it's coming. You can either attack this corner and maybe flare out wide to try to engage. You can attack and try to move to hopefully another piece of cover. And this guy still thinks you're up here. So you attack, move to here. He snaps here, and then you can engage him here. That's one way to do it. Another thing you can do to avoid being a victim of pre-firing is, don't sit in these corners. You're going to want to sit in spots, maximizing your use of cover where you can observe lots of lanes, where it's not easy for this guy to figure out exactly where you're going to be every time. You're not sitting in that easy right-hand corner or left-hand corner or whatever. You're not sitting in the blind corner. You're sitting in a good position where you have lots of lanes and good cover yourself. That's a good way to beat pre-firing. But anytime you're going to be sitting in a place and waiting for somebody, and you're in a spot where maybe you've already engaged somebody from there, or it's just a common area for players to get kind of funneled to, which is common in CQB fields, you are going to be subject to getting killed by pre-firing. So, final thoughts on pre-firing. Personally, I don't like it. I think it's reckless, and I don't think it is an intelligent thing for a professional to do. However, in the sport context, if there is no med, it is effective. You cannot deny its effectiveness, and I'm not saying it should be illegal. I think it's absolutely effective. In fact, it's a great tool to use against people who camp on corners, which is really common in airsoft CQB fields. And if you want to take out campers, pre-firing is a great way to do it. So that's all I got for pre-firing. Please like and subscribe and hit the little bell or whatever. Still selling Gunfather Milsim patches. If you want to get a hold of one of these, Look me up on Facebook at Gunfather Milsim. Send me a message. These cost $8. They might cost a little bit more if I got to ship it overseas. I've had to ship several, and I really appreciate all the support, guys, buying these patches and basically spreading the word of the channel for me. So thanks for watching.